right.
All right.
This is it.
This is it. Um,
Take it away, co-host.
am I? Um, well, I don't know. I think this is exciting. Our first episode. Um, I don't know. Maybe we could just start off by introducing ourselves. I don't know. I think most people know us,
What most people
Kind of. I
we
think
don't have
everybody.
any.
No?
Maybe our immediate cousins
Yeah,
might know us. Maybe
right?
I don't know. I change my hair color every 3 months, so nobody knows who I
I've
am anymore. I'm like
noticed. Yeah,
incognito.
yeah, yeah.
But yes, this is our first episode, and no, nobody knows us.
No.
We'll be lucky if our own kids watch this. I don't even think all our kids followed our Facebook page yet.
My oldest actually said I need to come and monitor this to see if it's cringe. Like, oh, that's great.
Did you assure her that it will be
I
cringe
know.
and she should just buckle up? But honestly, the amount of cringe we've put up with from our kids,
Oh,
they can handle it from their moms.
yeah, yeah.
Are any of them doing something like this? No.
Oh, no, they're barely getting
So
up every day,
that's
right?
right. It's the crack of 2:30. How come my kid isn't awake
Woo.
yet?
Yeah, too early.
Honestly, as a teenager, I never could do that.
Yeah.
Not I think I wasn't allowed,
No,
but had I been allowed, I probably still wouldn't have. But that's
no.
for a different part of the conversation, and
Yes.
we should get into our very first episode of Granny's Basement podcast.
Yep.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Let's actually introduce ourselves.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, joining us in Granny's basement. This is my cousin Raelene. I'm Ricki. Uh, what can I say? I've been lucky enough to be married for 22 years. I have 4 kids. I have a pretty amazing life. There is a tough part of our story. I think I'm going to share it now. I have, like I said, 4 kids. 2 of our kids have a neurodegenerative immune disorder. It's called ataxia telangiectasia. And yes, that is a mouthful. It's something that took me a long time to learn how to say. And I think it took me longer to learn how to spell it. Um, but it is a disorder that affects my kids' cerebellum. It is an umbrella disease, so they have markers of other diseases, like Parkinson's and MS and a bunch of other disorders. It's my oldest son and my youngest daughter who have it, and both of my kids used to walk independently, and now they are in wheelchairs full time, and they are so smart, almost too smart. I know my youngest is pretty witty, so she can give you a tongue lashing. Um, you know, but now they're, like I said, they're in wheelchairs full time. They're super smart. They unfortunately have like the self-care skills of a toddler, and they need help with almost anything. Not everything, but most things. Most kids with AT don't live past their early teens because of their immune issues. Now, obviously, in this day and age, with different technology and advancement in medicine, those sort of that sort of changed a little bit. But my kids are 2 of less than, I think, 20 in all of Canada, and I think 2 of about 500 in all of North America. Yeah, I mean, they're more susceptible to cancer and other diseases and stuff like that. Aspiration is huge, lung disease is huge. Something like the common flu could kill them. But
Hmm.
I'm very lucky. Like my kids are doing fantastic, aside from fine motor skills and being able to walk. Anyhow, I could talk about this all day, but I'll leave it at that for now. I just wanted to share it because it is such a huge part of everyday life in my family. And, so there's stories that are going to come up and you're going to wonder why. So
Yeah.
I thought I would just, kind of get it out there. And, you know,
Yeah.
that said, we don't want this podcast to be centered around AT. It's just a part of my life, and I feel like I need to acknowledge it. And I want to emphasize that yes, it's unfortunate, but I have a super amazing support system, and
Mm,
my kids are doing great. But every day does come with its challenges, but I
mhm,
am grateful. I know it could be more difficult. So I really, I can't complain. I'm blessed. So
mm.
but I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah,
I know it's not easy to talk about that and to share, especially in this sort of like wide who knows who's going to be
yeah.
watching this, right? But I think we both decided coming into this podcast that it was about transparency and it was about being honest, and this is family based. We want to connect with other families, and I think being honest about the challenges and about sort of the realness is a part of this. And so thank you for doing that, setting the tone for,
Yeah.
the podcast. And yeah, it's not necessarily about all the challenges in people's lives, but we don't want to shy away from any
No.
topic, and that's what we say in our promo, right?
Yeah.
Nothing goes unsaid.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And two,
yeah, and
I just because there's so many stories come up and I just don't want to be vague in my
yeah, yeah.
storytelling. So
Yeah, it's like, "Wait, do I have to censor myself?"
I
And I don't want you to
yeah,
have to do that, none of us
no.
want that, so, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, awesome. I am Raelene, and Ricky and I are cousins, and we're going to share a lot about that, I'm sure, and how this sort of came to be. But I also have a big family. I have 5 kids. We often joke that, when people say, "Well, why do you have so many kids?" Like they nicely try to say that, but it's
Yeah.
like they think you're in a cult or something.
I know. I know.
Um,
Did you
I
do
think
it on
maybe we
purpose?
kind yeah, yeah, was that are they all yours?
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're all mine. Yes, I've been in this married to the same person for 32 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, 5 great kids. They're all artists, all creative. We had hoped that maybe somebody in there would be an accountant or a dentist or I don't know, entertainment
Yeah.
lawyer, something that could help us with all our entrepreneurial artistic endeavors. But no, they're
No.
all just artists and actors and musicians and writers and amazing. And I
Yeah.
love them to death. They've been very encouraging about us doing this podcast and bringing our real selves. I've been getting messages from their friends, which like is so heartwarming. Um, so it's so great. So yeah, I've been, as I said, married 32 years, been with the same guy for 40 years since we were kids, met him when we were 12. It's like such a weird, doesn't even make sense
No.
story. Um, and yeah, I'm super entrepreneurial. I didn't know that until I was kind of in my 40s. I'd done lots of things, but didn't really count them. I kind of dismissed them because I was technically a stay-at-home mom, but I was a stay-at-home mom who kind of did a lot and didn't realize where it would take me later in life. And so, um, I don't know. That's who we are. You're going to hear so much more about us as we go into this podcast and as we share our stories, our lives, that we're just so heavily influenced by our grannies. And I mean, I want to share the story. And Ricky wants to share too about how this came to be. And I'm Ricky. Like, why don't you just take it, start it off? Let's tell everybody how this started.
Um, well, I know we were talking about work, and since I had been doing a lot of research on podcasts, because I was trying to find some for you to get on for your other business, and we got to discussing podcasts, and I said, "I'm about to just start my own." And, it's sort of like
Well, you said they were so boring, like, that they
yes.
were just so dry, and
Yeah,
how do they have, like,
I
38,000
know.
followers when
I
it's
was
like
blown away.
and I know, and there's a reason I gave you the task of going through all the podcasts to find
Yep.
which ones might be suitable, 'cause, it's painful.
I think I probably went through 500 podcasts to get to a usable list of, like, 47. And, we were having this conversation, and I was just sort of like, "This is," like, "I'm about to do my own." And that's when you were like, "Oh my gosh," like, I would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll jump in here because I have been thinking for a long time about doing a podcast. I've had several ideas. I know exactly the kind of podcast I wanted, but I didn't want to do it alone, and I didn't want to just have guests and things like that. I wanted an actual co-host and somebody that but Ricky and I were cousins and we did grow up together, but you know how cousins sort of drift apart, right? You go have your own lives and you go have your own family. And it was actually another cousin of ours who kept saying to me, "You gotta talk to Ricky about a podcast. Ricky and you would be great on a podcast." And I'm like, like, maybe, but I don't know Ricky that well
Yeah.
anymore, right? Like, we hadn't sort of reconnected. And then when we started kind of working together a little bit on something else, that's when I started, like, I was sussing you out to
Yeah.
see, is this gonna, like, um, and that's when this came up and you're, like, going on a whole rant about how
Yeah.
horrible all these podcasts are, and in
Yeah.
the back of my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, maybe this is right, maybe this
Yeah.
is right." And then you actually had an idea, and you had
Yes.
already sort of thought through and
Yes. Well, and it's something I too have sat on for years. I had actually proposed it to a friend of mine because I thought that would be great. I am not going to lie, it kind of started with a different sort of concept being in Granny's kitchen. And because growing up for me, I felt like that was the place where all the ladies would get together. And, you would go to Granny's house and, you would listen to them gossip or share advice or whatever. It was like the place where you would go and get the tea.
complain about the men.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was always a welcoming environment, right? And,
Yeah.
so that was sort of what I threw at you, and
Mhm.
it grew
Well,
into, like
yeah, sorry.
no,
I just
just
want to
it
say
grew
thank
into, like, I shared that, and then you threw some really great ideas back, and it just sort of snowballed.
well, I think because your initial idea was to call it grandma's kitchen
Yes.
or the word grandma, and I'm like, we don't have
Yeah.
grandmas. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we do, but like our grannies
Yeah.
were, and probably like we shared with people that were cousins, but just for a little context, Ricky's technically my second
Yeah.
cousin. So my granny is her granny's mom.
Yeah.
So we'll get all these pieces together. So when
Right.
we say grannies plural, we do mean two people.
Yeah.
But if we say granny, we also generally mean the older granny,
Yeah.
Granny Rosella,
Yeah.
because, because my kids also called her granny Granny,
Yeah.
right? Even though she would be their aunt. So,
Yeah, our
it's just the
our
way it kind of was.
family dynamic sort of seems a little strange, to some people,
May
but
probably,
yeah.
but I bet you if you scratch the surface of their family
Oh,
dynamic,
I know.
my
Yeah.
but we went from grandma's kitchen, and then the problem I had with the word kitchen was it made me feel like this would be like a cooking or
Mm.
like a like traditional skills. And while there's nothing wrong with that, I knew I wanted a podcast where I can swear if I want to, where we can tell scary
Yeah.
stories, where we can tell the weird things and and I mean, I'm very much in all my life around sort of personal growth, business growth, and those like I just wanted a place where everything could be talked about. But we love this idea of like this cousin support, this like family support. And being able to and it just reminded us, and I think it was my daughter who said Granny's basement,
Yeah,
like, "What about Granny's basement?" And it was like, that's it, because we would all sneak down into the basement, you'd have everybody bring their blankets, you'd have sleepovers, like, it was just the place to go,
yeah.
and that's where you told all the secrets, and
Mhm.
so that's kinda how it started, just
Yeah,
based on Ricky's initial idea, and then we just snowballed from there.
yeah. And we wanted it to be that place where we could share, anything under the sun, not just, specific things,
Yeah,
because that's how
yeah,
it was growing up. We'd get together and
yeah.
share those crazy stories and, you know,
Yeah, and then I think was it you or somebody had the idea of calling it Granny's attic, or
no,
somebody said that,
no,
and it was like we immediately both thought,
yeah,
"This isn't we're not crafting."
no.
Like, Ricky
That's
knows how to
exactly.
craft, I don't craft.
I
So,
I am a craftaholic. I
good, so when people start like, when we get so popular and people start sending us gifts, they
yeah,
can send you
perfect.
craft supplies.
Yeah.
They can send me, like, foodie items because I love food.
Well, I'm not gonna say no to food either, but I am
Me neither.
definitely, yeah, I am a serial crafter. Like I start so many things. Yeah.
Well, let's tell everybody about our grannies. Let's start there.
Yeah.
Do you want to start with your granny?
With my
Or
grand
should we start with my granny because she was kind of the OG
I think maybe
granny?
because she was the OG, you
Okay.
know?
So my granny, and Ricky would also call her granny, but was Granny Rosella.
Yeah.
And we loved our granny so much. And I think, like, I don't want to get emotional. My granny is here with me tonight, and she'd be very actually, she wouldn't be stoked we were doing this. She'd be
No.
like, "What are you doing?"
I know.
She'd be like, "Mm, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. Look at all this gear. It
Yeah.
probably cost a lot." You know?
Yeah.
So she probably wouldn't be stoked.
No.
But our Granny Rosella was, she was an incredible lady. She was the oldest of 11 children. She was, a black sheep, so she was the woman at that time who wore the red lipstick and wanted to drive and, like, do all the things that women didn't really do,
Yeah.
and she was a bit of a force to be reckoned with, and she was still traditional in the sense that she raised her kids. She My grandpa was, I think, could be he was like a farmer. They owned a ranch, very, prairie people,
Yeah.
and, Granny just was one of those people who her house was always welcoming, and she was like, she baked the cookies, she
Yeah.
baked the buns and stuff, but Granny was, what's the word? Like, she was not like a typical housewife. She was
No.
very like, she'd be out breaking horses with
Yes.
grandpa. She was, like, running that place. She wasn't, like, soft and cuddly and warm. She
No.
wasn't like the cutesy little grandma. She was like the cowboy boot, like,
Yes.
saddle slinging kind of woman, and she was, like, such a model for all of us.
Oh, definitely.
And their place, and I know your granny carried this tradition on, but their place was open door.
Mhm.
We were so proud to bring our friends there. Even as teenagers, we were so happy to bring our friends there,
Yeah.
to just be able, it was like our open door policy. If we wanted to stay the night, we wanted to come anytime. We'd drive our crappy little cars up when we were teenagers to just be there. And any other relatives might be there at the same time. You never knew who would be there.
No, it
It
was
didn't
always
matter.
a
You
surprise.
belonged.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
but
it.
you belonged.
Yes.
This was your place. So that was Granny Rosella, and I can't wait to share more about her
Oh,
to other
I
people.
know she
But
was
introduce us to Granny Carol.
she too was a very strong woman. I don't know if I'd call her a black sheep. She just sort of totally did her own thing. Um,
That's right.
you know, the most supportive, loving granny I have ever met. But yes, strong woman. She too was out there, with the horses and, helping grandpa and, yeah, she was a very strong woman. And she too had an open door policy. And I think that that kind
Yeah.
of spilt into my home because I have an open door policy. Anybody can come here whenever they want. And I think I got that from her. Uh,
We're on the internet now, Ricky, so you might not wanna say that.
I
You
yeah,
might
so
might
no,
need
I
to edit that
don't.
out.
I don't have a door. It's locked.
It's locked. Big
Yeah.
dog.
But yeah, like, but yeah, I mean, she was an absolutely amazing woman. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so thankful to have had her in my life just because, she just was always like the glue that held our
Yeah,
family
yeah,
together, and
yeah.
very, very strong, opinionated lady, you know.
Mhm.
But I'm very grateful.
But she was really supportive. Yeah, and she was my dad's older sister.
Yeah.
So, just for, like, a little frame of
Yes.
reference, but yeah, but it was always like that, like, with the women in our family, it seems like there is very much that open door hospitality type, always food, always family, I never felt like I wasn't welcome,
No.
you know,
I think
and
for
that's
my
always been
Oh,
so
sorry.
great. No, go.
I think for myself, I was so welcomed into her home because my mom had me when she was young, and I ended up living with my grandparents for most of my life. So I was very fortunate to have that structured, strict upbringing. But I was so lucky to have had her because she gave me that stability and,
Mhm.
never made me feel like I was interrupting anything that her and grandpa were doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think these women are the people we aim to take after, right? We wanna take after them, and this whole idea of Granny's Basement Podcast is about this gathering place. It's about intentionally bringing that back, these fun moments, the basement, memories were always fun. There's a big pool table down there, the
Yep.
cousins were all but it wasn't always fun for you. You were actually the youngest.
Mhm. Yeah. I can honestly say that as many happy memories as the basement does bring me, I'm also traumatized, because I was the youngest and I did live with my grandparents. So my aunts were not much older than me. And, they told me Dracula lived in the basement and, told me all sorts of scary stuff. And, my granny would always
That sounds like them.
Yes, and so, Granny Carol, she would tell me to go get jam, and I would take my cat with me and, like, leave him for dead because I had to go buy these big black cutouts in the basement, and so I had to go get jam, and so I'd be like, "Come with
Needing a
me."
distraction. It's
Yeah,
like an offering.
yes, yeah, I was like, "There you go." But, yeah, they kinda
Uh,
did a number on me. So today, we're going to talk about relationships. I think, successful relationships, are they possible? Can you have a long-term relationship? You know, I know, I know you said this already, but you and Trev have been together forever. And, obviously you shared that already. I said that. But what has made it successful? Is there one super important factor that you think you can pinpoint?
well, for a long time, we said we would just kinda stay together because neither one of us wanted all the kids.
Right?
So, it just seemed, we're just white knuckle it till
Yeah.
the end. No. But, honestly, a lot of relationships do that,
Hmm.
but I think with Trev and I, we did meet really young, so there was a part of us that grew up together, and I do think for us that was maybe, a pretty big factor, and generally speaking, it doesn't work for people like that,
Yeah.
but, I do think that we really did a lot of work, even though we didn't understand it's what we were doing, but just the emotional intelligence part of it, I think I had to learn myself really fast that what respect meant.
Mhm.
Like respect for going both ways and being not humiliating each other, not, I don't know how to say that, but I see that a lot in relationships
Yeah.
where it's kind of the you me
Mhm.
thing. It's like people have to kind of always be better than the next person or point out flaws or point out mistakes. And it's almost like humiliating in that way. And I say the same thing about parenting,
Yeah.
right? People ask, like, why do you have such a good relationship with your kids? And it's because I did not shame
Yeah.
parent them. I did not
Yeah.
have to be better than them. I did not have to
Nope.
prove them wrong and me right. And in partnerships, it can be like that. It's really hard sometimes to bite your tongue when he's wrong and you're right and you know it and he knows it, but it's like
No.
there's no point in pointing that out because the only thing it's meant to do is hurt the other person and make them feel embarrassed, and that's never a good feeling for
No.
anybody. So I think a big part of our relationship, and it certainly has not been perfect, honestly. There's been lots of times where we both had to sit down together and separately and decide if this was what we wanted.
Yeah.
And I think that's healthy. I think if you do that in a healthy way, people grow and change.
Yeah.
So we are not the same people we were when we met when we were kids. And then when we had kids, babies ourselves when we were in our 20s.
Yeah.
We're very different people now.
Yeah.
And I always think to the kind of 3 levels of relationships, and I can't remember who I learned this from, so I can't really source it, but, the first level of relationship is very much about what can I get out of it,
Mhm.
right? It's very much about, I want my needs met, whatever it takes, I'm gonna meet my needs. And you see people out there dating now, and that is how they look at it.
Uh,
It's about me, I want my needs met, and I get that to
yeah.
a degree, but it's very much about me. And as soon as my needs are not met, I'm moving on,
Yeah. And
right?
I
So it's not really reciprocal.
no, and I think, like, not to just sort of cut into your story, but, like, I don't know how people date nowadays. Like, it's just
Mm.
it's crazy.
It does. I mean, we should do a whole episode on that because we both have adult children that are in this
Yes.
stage, right? They're doing that. But the second level of relationship is transactional. So it's very much about I love you and I want to give you what you need in your life and as a person, and but I also need what I need. And so let's find this transactional, like I'll give you some of what you need so I can have some
Yeah.
of what I need. And a lot of relate and that's not necessarily unhealthy, but many relationships just stay there, right? And it becomes this kind of roommate situation. It can, because it's transactional, it can lose a lot of that sort of uh passion, spark, like the romance side of it. It
Yeah.
can become very functional. And it can become so functional that it works, right? That people don't really recognize what they're missing sometimes until later. And often relationships are in that space
Mhm.
while they're raising kids,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and because you just get into autopilot, things have to be done. The romance side is almost like a luxury you
Yeah.
don't even remember you should have, right?
But it's also
And that
seems
and
sorry, it just also seems
No, it's okay.
convenient, right? It's just
It's convenient. Yeah, it's convenient, but the problem is that we are biological animals, right? So we're going through the function of this relationship. We are missing the intimacy side of it, maybe not even realizing that we're missing the intimacy side of it. And so underneath there's like resentments building up on both sides that you might not even notice until you're kind of at a critical point, right?
yeah.
And so the third level is where I don't know what it's called, but it's where you want what your partner needs becomes very important to you because they are not going to move to their higher self. They're not going to move to being the best version they can be if they don't have that,
Yeah.
right? And so you'll actually sacrifice things in your own life, and I don't mean in a fully negative way, but so that they can be happy, so that you can give them what they need. And it's less about transaction It's more about like, it's okay for me to take a step back so that you can do this or have this because it's going to fulfill you in some way. And ideally, there's give and take, right?
Yeah.
But many relationships doesn't mean that both partners are always in level three. You can kind of bounce between, but partnerships in level one don't make it at all. Partnerships in level two can make it, but likely that's where you see people stepping outside of a relationship. That's where you see resentment building. It's when you sort of get to the point where you care so much about that person and their own growth that you'd actually be willing to let them go if it was better for the relationship and better for them.
Yeah.
But, obviously, if you're that kind of awake and you're that aware, and your partner is too, then you're building something new that's kind of beyond the transaction. Um, and I think that's like Trev and I grew so much through these phases, and often women will have almost growth spurts that outpace a man,
Hmm.
and that's, like, no shade to men, that is just sort of the way it is sometimes, and, we saw this, like, in our grannies' eras, right? Like, the women did not if they went back to school or they did something, you would often see men being very insecure and very worried that uh, their partner was out there doing those things, and even in our generation, that's very true. I can think of many friends who, as the kids started growing up and the woman started to advance herself in some way, it was very threatening to the man,
Hmm.
and relationships will break up because of that. But with Trev and I, he was very supportive, and he was not just that, but he would help find ways to make the things work
Yeah.
so that I could do them, right? And so I think it was very much about like respecting what I needed and me respecting what he needed. And that's maybe a long-winded, we may have to cut half of this, but a long-winded way of saying that I think that respect was such a huge part of it, and like really genuinely caring about the other person. And I kind of joke about this, but it's true also. I learned very early on. I was super volatile at the beginning of our marriage. Like I'd fly off the handle and I'd have all these like fits. I'm pretty calm person now, but I wasn't then. And he would take the brunt of that in my
Yeah.
little like tantrums. And but I learned early on that I first of all, I never wanted to hurt his spirit. That was a big thing for me, is like actually what your words can bite so deep, and you sometimes people can't get past that.
No.
And I know that from my childhood, right?
Hmm.
The words that people say can stay with you forever.
Absolutely. You can't,
And
and
so
you
as
can't take it back, right? You can't
That's
make it
right.
better sometimes.
Yeah, you can't unring a bell.
Yeah.
And so that was something, a guiding principle for me. I didn't always get it right, but it certainly was in my mind. And the second one was I never wanted to say something that I had to apologize for because apologizing was so hard. I'm an emotionally intelligent person, so I will apologize. And I've tried to teach my kids that that's such an important skill, is being able to humble yourself and apologize. But man, it bites and I don't like it and I don't want to do it. So I always try to like, if we're going to get into it in some way, I don't cross that line,
Yeah.
or try not to. Maybe there's things I should apologize for that I haven't yet, but
I get accused of like doing this like dance around, and then it's kind of like an apology in my own way without apologizing.
but not really.
No.
Yeah, both our partners are going to watch this
I know.
episode and be like, "What are you talking about?
Well,
That's not
he's
who
well
any
aware.
of those things."
I'm told it all the time. So, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, it
it's just
was.
the relationships are hard,
Mhm.
and making them last is even harder.
Oh, right? But I think for you, I could maybe have called it, because I think didn't didn't he, like, take a bus to British Columbia to meet you?
You were there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I was living at Ricky's grannies. Grandma, who's grandma? I was living at Ricky's grannies across the country. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, from Saskatchewan to BC, but some people won't know where that is.
No.
Um, and Ricky was young. You were what, maybe 10, 11,
Something like
something like
that,
that?
yeah.
12? I don't know, somewhere in there. and, also living at your granny's, and so, uh, yeah, I was working there. I was 18 years old,
Mm.
taking a bit of a gap year, turned out to be a gap 3 decades, but whatever. And, yeah, Trevor, not only did he take a bus from Saskatchewan, which was like, I don't know, 30, 40 hour, I have
Oh,
no idea how
yeah.
long the bus ride took, but he had come directly from a wedding, and so he had stuffed his suit into a diet. It changed in the bathroom on the bus from his suit into, like, bus clothes, and so, yeah, and when he got there, I mean, I didn't know he was gonna propose,
Yeah.
but he did, and yeah, and you were, like, one of the first people, and
Yeah.
Ricky was a candle lighter in our wedding, and so maybe
Yes.
at some point, some pictures will
I
show up
really
from
hope
that.
not, because if I
You have
recall,
I'll always remember your haircut.
oh,
Yeah,
that was that wasn't
and
even my
sadly, I put you in
fault.
a really ugly dress. My candlelight dresses and bridesmaid dresses were
I
hideous,
know,
like,
but
3
my
words.
hair at
Horrible.
that time was like, I don't like, I went in for a perm at because back then that was a thing.
'Cause that's what you do, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I had gone in, but I had wanted, like, not this perm that pulled my hair up to here, and, oh, it was so bad. It was so bad. It was one of those
I
times
can't
I wish I could
I can't
erase.
remember it. It's probably not as bad as you think
Oh, no,
it
it's
might
bad.
be, and we're gonna find
It's
out, but
no, it's bad.
yeah,
I'll
I
Photoshop
think
hair onto that photo because it's
see,
bad.
my wedding pictures, I don't have many of them because we did not have a good photographer, and most of them were blurry, but the ones that were not blurry is me doing this.
Oh.
So, I don't even have any good wedding pictures. If any of our cousins out there have wedding pictures, please send them.
Mhm.
You can send yours too, but also if you have any of me, that'd be great.
You don't need to look for me at all.
If you see Ricky, please circle her in red and send it into our Facebook group.
Oh, well, private message only.
Actually, send them directly to
Oh,
me,
no.
and I'll make sure they're properly utilized.
No, because Maddie could probably do some great stuff with that.
She can fix your
Oh, I
hair.
hope so.
Maddie's my daughter and our editor and our graphic designer
Yeah.
and our our style guider.
Yeah.
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 All of it.
Yeah, I remember.
Mhm.
I remember Trev coming. I remember your wedding, but not much. I don't know.
'Cause you were distracted by your weird hair.
I think it was the curls. It just sort of, like, took my brain out. It was bad.
Well, that's okay. We all have those moments for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. And how about you? Tell us all about your
Ah,
supportive spouse, your deep, everlasting relationship. Tell me.
yeah.
Tell
I
us.
don't know. It's
Give us the tea.
it's weird because it doesn't seem that long ago that we got together, you know? We got back together or we got together in 98. So, 26 years ago. We've been married for 22. It's, you know, sort of like learned how to walk together, you know, and work off
Mm.
of each other. And, if you're having a bad day, you kind of can piggyback off the other one because they're supportive and they can help and then you kind of trade places and he'll piggyback off of me and my strengths and kind of work together. I think I've been very fortunate to say that I married my best friend because
Mm.
I love spending time with him. He obviously loves to spend time with me more, um
Obviously.
yeah, you know. But I think in our unique situation with our kids, having a strong partner it's essential,
Mhm.
you know. Not every moment is easy. And so sometimes you need somebody else to help you. And we work really well together. And it's that shared strength and understanding that allows us to kinda, face whatever comes our way. and I think
Mhm.
we have really great communication skills. Um, we don't really fight that often. I mean, we might bicker, but nothing really big, right? And so I think I think that's a big thing. We talk to each other, not talk at each other. And we listen when the other person's talking. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that those are, you know, some some really strong qualities in our relationship. Um,
Well, it sounds like genuine care,
mhm,
right? Like, it sounds like genuine care and back to that respect word,
yeah.
right? Where it's like mutual. Because I think like Trev and I don't really fight either. And even back when we fought, it was me
Mhm,
fighting, not him.
mhm.
It was me having whatever, but he just never kind of fought back.
Mhm. I
And I think I'd like us to do some research into this and do another episode on, but I have heard that there's a lot of people out there who think it's unhealthy to not fight. And I would argue that. Like
mhm.
I would, because maybe it's more around the definition of what fighting is,
Yeah.
like what that looks like. And I think back to Granny and Grandpa, and I mean, we were not in their private
No.
lives, right? Like we were around a lot and stuff. And I know that speaking of like Granny Rosella and Grandpa Dave, I know it wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
Like you heard, like, even as adults and stuff, you learned a little more. Like no relationship is
No.
perfect. There's always something.
Yeah.
But I never saw Granny and Grandpa not care for each other, and, like, even as when they were super old, they were flirty and, and sort of into that,
They were very
but
flirty. Granny
yeah,
Rosella and Grandpa Dave, I think.
kinky.
You know, I remember very vividly, one time we were over at the
Oh, no.
farm.
Is this restricted? Is this
No,
XXX?
it's
Are
not
you
so
okay?
restricted, but I think maybe at
Okay.
my age, I felt it was completely inappropriate. You know?
Oh, no.
Well, they were
Tell us.
they were quite a bit older. And grandpa, he went to the bathroom for one of his special trips, and he went in and comes out. And he comes out, and Granny Rosella's sitting there, and we're all around, like, in a circle talking. And he walks up to her, and he's like says something to her in her ear, and he starts, like, rubbing, like, up her shirt and into, like, her back, and he's kind of, like, rubbing back and forth.
They're like, "Whoa,
And I'm like,
claw my eyes out."
"What is happening here?" And all of a sudden, like, you can see Granny Rosella's trying to talk, and he's kinda bothering her, and he turns to her and he goes, "I'm feeling frisky tonight."
Oh,
She's like, "Dave,
no.
what?" And, like, just kinda, like, slapped his hand away. But as a young
My goodness.
kid, I was like, "That was completely inappropriate." But I just remember always seeing that. Like, they always were so gentle and loving and
You're affectionate,
respectful
yeah.
of each other,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yeah, I remember that too.
yeah, and it was just you would see that all the time, and it was just, it was so nice to see. And then even
And you
too,
got
like,
the
with
sense
Granny
that
and
he
Grandpa.
adored her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just seems like we were really lucky to have grannies who, had spouses that were respectful and loving and caring and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know, I remember when I met Trev, like, they kinda say you marry your dad, right? Or, like, you can marry somebody who's got those personality traits, and my dad was the quietest man on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, he might say 2 words in a day. He was very kind,
Mhm.
like, very kind man, but he was just very, very quiet, and I remember when I met Trev, I was grade 7. I was grade 7, and the church that we were a part of was going on a youth group trip. So we were going from Saskatchewan to Banff, and it was my first youth group trip. I'd made one friend. Her name was Jeanette. I was pretty outgoing. Jeanette was a little quieter, but I said, let's find cute boys and sit near them.
Yeah.
That was the plan, to find and I liked kind of dark-haired guys, and I mean, what do you know? What do I like?
No.
I'm 12, like, whatever, right? But that in my mind,
Mhm.
that's what I liked. And so sure enough, there was 2 boys, and they were boys sitting in a row in the bus, and one had dark hair and one had blonde hair. And I thought, "Okay,
Yeah.
here we are." And we sit in front of them, and I'm like, we're giggly and whatever. And these guys turned out, we had lots of kind of funny jokes and stuff. And it turned out that the blonde one was hilarious.
Yeah.
Like he made me laugh the entire time, and we were inseparable.
Yeah.
We were inseparable. That was Trevor. I mean, we broke up during, like, high school, and you don't date when you're 12, so that dating for us just meant, like, being at youth group at
Yeah.
the same time.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, we were super, like, nerdy churchgoers, because that's the only time our parents would all let us see each other
Mm.
was when we were at a church thing, so all of a sudden, I'm sure both of our parents were like, "Why do they wanna go to church all the
Yeah.
time?" Like,
How many times
but
can you go for, youth group?
well, it was like all of a sudden we wanted to go to Sunday morning service and Sunday evening service.
Yeah.
Then they'd have a midweek service and then they'd have Friday youth group. And like that was the only time we could really see each other until later when we had we had cars or bus fare jobs or
Yeah.
whatever. So that was sort of how. But Trevor it is like my dad in many ways. He's not super quiet, but he's very thoughtful.
Mhm.
He will not be provoked easily, into, he's pretty steadfast,
Yeah.
and I think in many ways that was my dad too, very quiet, but strong opinions,
Yeah.
knows exactly what he thinks about things.
Yeah. I think it's strange because Rob is nothing like my dad. However, he's very much like my grandpa, a watcher,
Mm,
very quiet, a bit of an introvert, very hands on. He likes to build things, he likes to fix things. So very much like my grandpa, very much.
mhm.
Not like my dad. My dad was very
Yeah.
outgoing like me, a great storyteller. And, um, but yeah, Rob is he's definitely like my grandpa. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
just lets me talk and talk and talk and talk some more,
do the thing.
kind of like
Yeah.
grandpa let granny, you know, she would always,
Yeah, it's when we get quiet, our partners are
oh
nervous.
yeah.
Like,
Well, Granny
yeah,
would when she would travel, she was like, "If I wasn't the one to talk in the car, there would be no conversation." And I'm like,
yeah,
"Yep, that's exactly."
yeah. And I think, in this episode, we're talking about like relationships, and I know we'll have more episodes where we go deeper into other questions. We're hoping people will send us questions about this. It's something we both feel we want to support people to have strong relationships. But I think back to sort of the era. And I know, like, with our grandparents and stuff, there's a lot of social pressure, religious pressure, stay with the person, right? But there also is something to be said for, you know, they came from a generation where you fix it, you don't throw it
Yeah,
away. And, that meme has been around and stuff. So it's not the first time I'm sure people have heard that. But it really resonates with me that a lot of people just don't really take the time or have the confidence to fix something, and people do make mistakes, and people do, and definitely there are mistakes in relationships that maybe somebody can't get past, and that's okay, but
well, I think it's about the
there's
work.
also something about growth,
Yeah,
right? Like, yeah, being able to do the work and being able to, and I think there's been times in our relationship, and I can honestly say that I thought he needed to do the work and he needed to change and he needed to do that, make that effort. And I realized that it was me.
yeah,
I just saw a TikTok, a woman I follow, and she was talking about how she cut off her parents for toxic behavior, right? So you hear that a lot these days. You cut somebody off, you don't tolerate the toxic behavior, and you set your boundaries, and that's all fine, all great. Until
yeah,
she realized years later that she was the toxic one, that she was the one that had been bringing this sort of toxicity into their relationship, and she had to work through that and make amends with her parents
Yeah.
and her family because of that. But sometimes we just don't have the self-awareness to know,
No.
you know.
No.
But Granny was, as you say, she was the glue.
Mhm.
Both our grannies, they
Yeah.
were the heartbeat and center of our family, and they're both gone, and that's actually been like it's left a really big hole in our lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't get emotional.
Nope.
We're not doing that. But it is part of what's inspired this because we want to carry this on,
Yeah.
right? And neither one of us are grannies yet, but
I better not.
wanted to
No, thank you.
but we are at that stage where I think we learned a lot from our grannies,
Mhm.
and we want to be able to share that,
Yeah.
and we want to be able to have fun with all of you.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, do you have any like advice from Granny? I don't even know where we're at with time, so but
I'm
we'll just keep
sure.
going. I know I have a story I want to share, and I don't know if you do too, but
Uh,
um any advice from grannies, from either
I would
granny,
well,
Rosella or
I know
Carol?
Granny Carol. I can't really recall anything specific. When we were going through the diagnosis of our son, we were just trying to find ourselves. And one thing that Granny told me was, you need time for yourself. You need time to just be Rob and Ricky and
Mhm.
unwind. So I don't care what it takes, but you need to pack your bags and you guys need to go away. You need to step away from everything
Mhm.
that you're juggling and going through and all of that stuff. And it's something that not only was fantastic advice because, you know, we started going away once a year, just the two of us. And it's probably been one of the best things we could have done for our relationship,
Mhm.
because we get to be Rob and Ricky. We're not mom and dad, and we're not well, I think we're more able to let loose, right? And not be so focused on everything at home. So I think that that was one of the things that stuck with me because she just always made a point of taking a minute and it being about us, you
Mhm.
know? So,
It's awesome advice.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Do you remember
Yeah,
anything
I
particular?
do, and yeah, and it's not specific about relationship, but I think it was more related to the relationship I had with myself.
Mhm.
So I struggled with confidence when I was young, like a lot, even raising my kids and and I had this kind of entrepreneurial spirit. I was always starting things, I was always doing things. I definitely have a bit of a renaissance personality. Like I'm pretty good at some stuff but I like to move forward and I like to learn, and it's a little ADHD at
Yeah.
times, but I remember, being at home with the kids. I started little businesses. I wrote a 70,000 word novel while waiting at the bus stop for my kids. And I thought these things were really normal, but I had this almost like frenetic panic that I wasn't doing enough,
Mhm.
and it's this productivity monster, right? You get caught in that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do this and I wanted to do that, but I was raising kids and I didn't want to like sacrifice and be a bad mom, or at least what I thought would be a bad mom. And I remember my granny saying, like, Raylene, you can do all the things you want to in your life. You just might not do them all at the same time.
Yeah.
And there was something very freeing about that statement for me. Clearly, it made an impact
Yeah.
because I remember it all these years later. But it was almost like a big weight off my shoulders that, wait, I don't have to do them all today. Like,
Yeah.
I can just choose and start working towards something. And that actually really shaped my life in the way it's gone. And I know as we get into more episodes of the podcast, we'll talk about some of those um personal growth and development that we've had, but I think for me it was a huge turning point and almost like an anchoring piece for me to be like, okay, this is my home base and this is how I can grow,
Yeah.
you know? So I think that was one of the things I'll always remember that Granny told me.
Well, and I think it's good advice, right? Because I know even for myself, just wanting to do 50 million things all of the time and then feeling like I'm running out of time. It's
Yeah.
not about doing everything at one time. It's, getting to it when you can,
Mhm.
and it being more of an appropriate time.
Yeah. Well, and even things like going back to school, right? Like Granny Rosella didn't start university until she was in her 40s,
Yeah.
and neither did I,
Yeah.
right? So it was like that example too of, and we, we talk about our grannies, but they certainly are not the only strong women in our
No.
lives. We've had some amazing examples
Yeah.
um of just and men too. Like it's not
Yeah.
just about the grannies, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um
I think for myself, I've been pretty fortunate. I've had some really strong women in my life, not just, my granny Carol and Granny Rosella. I had my other granny, my dad's mom, and she too was a super strong lady. And so I
mhm,
cherish that as well because I got it from all angles. And, they were all like the anchor and the glue and sort of that, the matriarch, that everybody looks up to. And so I was really fortunate
mhm,
that way my whole life to have, those strong women in my life. There's
yeah.
others too, but those are
Mhm.
probably the three that you know, that
Yeah.
stand out.
I think, before we go into break, I think one of the things I really want to acknowledge, and I've seen this because I have 5 kids, and they've all had friends over the years, and you meet the kids in school, and there is a lot of people who don't have the strong women, don't have those people in their lives that have guided them in that way. And I think it's another big reason to do a podcast like this is to share some of those experiences and learning and try to be a support to people that might not have had those same examples. And, um, I think for both of us, we have big hearts for other people and we want to be able to sort of share what we've learned, and maybe that can be helpful to somebody else.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
as people are listening to this podcast, if they maybe didn't have that experience, they want to ask some questions, or want to get some perspective on something and just want a couple of non-grannies but influenced by grannies objective perspective. That's what we want to do, right? That's what we're here
Absolutely.
for.
You know, I think we have a lot to share. And, I certainly love to help people. You know, I think we all do. I think our
Yeah.
family is really big on that.
Yeah. And on that note, this is the portion of the podcast where I am going to read something. We debated if we were both going to share something, but this time I think I'm just going to share something I found, and uh it sparked a little interest. So I'm just going to read it and then we're going to talk about it. So this is from an article in People magazine, and I think they got it off of Reddit. So that it was something that the author wrote from Reddit. So the title is Girlfriend Who Refuses to Share Bathroom with Boyfriend in the Morning Sparks Debate, Compromise, and Communicate. This is my first long-term relationship, so I don't know if this is normal and if I'm just making a big deal, she wrote on Reddit. A woman refused to share the bathroom with her boyfriend in the morning, and it has sparked a debate online. In a post shared on Reddit, forum, a 24-year-old wrote that she and her boyfriend, 25, had moved into a one-bedroom flat last month, and where they share a single bathroom. The user detailed that her boyfriend had started coming into the bathroom when she's in there and using it. She added that she would understand if her partner needed to use the bathroom once or twice, or if he was like in an emergency, but she highlighted how the issue was that she just wanted some privacy. So the woman also explained that her boyfriend both leave early in the morning, and she was left feeling uneasy after her partner expressed that sharing the bathroom was not that weird. She's saying, "This is my first long-term relationship, so I don't know if this is normal or if I'm just making a big deal, but the flat is tiny and I just want some space. I feel like we're living on top of each other sometimes." In the comments, in the comment section of this post, many said that the couple needed to learn to compromise and communicate to meet each of their needs. If you both need to leave for work early and it's about getting ready, there are things that need to be done in the bathroom, except showering and shaving, using the toilet or sink. Getting dressed, putting on makeup, blow drying hair, things like that can be done elsewhere, one user wrote. You need to work together. Maybe one has 15 minutes and then so anyways, I'm going to end it there
Yeah.
because I just sort of laughed at that because this is something that has come up in our relationship. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people thought that was weird. Like a lot of comments were saying, and I've seen this sort of debate before in different places, and people think it's normal to both use the bathroom
No,
at the same time. Like,
no,
if you're standing side by side and one's doing their makeup and one's brushing their teeth, well, maybe, but even then, and I never understood those bathrooms with like two sinks and like,
I know.
I mean,
Like, we have a
no.
bathroom with 2 sinks, but I'm not I'm not sharing the bathroom at the same time. I mean, again, I kind of think that, yes, it's one thing if you're in there and one's brushing their teeth and you're, brushing your hair or washing your face really quickly and leaving, but I'm not going to the bathroom together, that's my time, I think that's where we kinda draw the line. Um, using the bathroom with my husband in there is kind of not something I
I think I think some things can just be left mysterious, right?
Yes.
Like some not everything needs to
No,
be fully shared.
no.
I think that too. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been married forever and it's like, no,
No,
you do like, I don't even want him using my towel. Like,
no.
move on. I'll be out in a minute,
I know.
Like it's like it's never been a thing
No,
for us. And I was so kind of shocked to see that people thought it was weird that people wouldn't use the bathroom at the same time. It is the last thing. I do not need
no,
to know that about you.
no.
I don't need to. Like, shut the door.
Yes.
You know.
Well, and I too, I get a little too comfortable when I go to the bathroom. I kind of like pull one of those George Costanzas, where he would like take his shirt off when he would go to the bathroom. There was a episode where he walked out with no shirt. I'm like, I get comfortable. I'm in there. It's my time. The kids aren't calling me.
You know what?
You know,
So when Ricky says open door policy in her home, she does not mean her
no,
bathroom.
not at all. That's my time. I make myself comfy and you know, I take my sweet time. You know,
Don't rush me.
no. I mean, like let's be real. I don't even fart in front of him. I'm just not, we've been together forever and it's just not one of those things that we do. I don't really understand how some couples are just so, relaxed that they can fart in front of each other. Um,
Oh my gosh. And you see those like TikToks or memes or whatever, YouTube, where they think it's
no.
funny, like where the guy just goes off and like thinks it's hilarious.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking, are you all 12 years
I
old?
know. I
Like,
don't
I didn't even do that when I was 12
know.
years old just to like make the joke. Like,
Yes.
it's
I think, there's kind of this joke too that, like, when you first get into a relationship, if you don't fart in front of each other in the first 2 weeks, then you kind of can't do it later on because it's kind of like past that threshold. And, many, many, many years ago, this was before we had kids, and, Rob and I were wrestling, and he jumps on my back, and I fart, and I got so mad, so mad. I was like, "Look what you made me do," and I got up and I left.
somehow it was his fault.
What?
Somehow it was his fault.
He was jumping on my back, so I had no control over that, and, I was just so mad, and I remember, us whatever, the rest of the night, I was pissed off, you know? But, yeah, I think he's farted in front of me one time too, and it's just sort of like we hit that 2-week mark and we didn't do it, so now we can't,
No,
you know?
ever
No.
again.
It's kind of a running joke because he'll be like,
Oh
"I'm gonna do
gosh,
it," and I'm like, You're not going to do that, like, you can say it,
not a thing.
it's just
You
gross." Like,
hold it in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are you
Well, that might be more odd to most
Yes.
couples than sharing the bathroom, but
Yes.
whatever, to each their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Compromise. That's like the height of
Yeah.
compromise, right?
You guys
Yeah,
don't
we're
share the bathroom, do you? No. No.
no, no, we're right now building a van to live in, and that bathroom door has a
Oh,
door,
good.
right? Like it has a door.
Yeah.
So we do not need to we share everything else in our lives. We do not need
No.
to go there,
How did you guys
you
do
know.
that too, though, when you guys were didn't you live in a tent for a bit?
Well, we had a Jeep with a
Yes.
rooftop tent and traveled around living in
Yeah.
it, yeah. But we had an outdoor bathroom, like, we had it had our like, a separate little pop-up tent with a bathroom in it, and it had walls and a door, you know?
You
So
guys just weren't free flowing it, you know?
no, and I mean, even if we were out, like, camping in the bush or something where you didn't have a toilet, if one of us needs to go use nature,
Yeah.
the other one isn't following along.
No.
I don't need him to hold my hair or something. Like,
"Did you need a hand?
pass me the time, good.
Just hold me
Let's
up."
just yeah, that's right. I'm old. My
My
leg muscles
anchor.
don't work the same way. Can I just hold on?
Yeah. Can I just use your shoulders?
This is this changing our relationship
Uh,
forever.
it just makes it stronger.
Sorry, I just yeah, no,
No,
we're not doing that.
no.
So, I don't know, maybe when we're super old and we have to like care for each other in a more, practical way. But even then, I'm just gonna hire a nurse for
I
him.
think so. I
Let's
think
do that.
that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
After working in the retirement home for 8 years, I think that will be the way.
Maybe, honestly, we just hit on it, Ricky. People want to know the success of long-term relationships. Do not share the bathroom.
No, do
Don't
not.
do it.
That is the
Don't do it.
key. That is the
Yeah,
secret.
shut the door and have your 10 minutes by
Yeah.
yourself. You do not need to know what's going on in
No,
there. You do not need to be a part of
you
it.
don't.
You know, you get your turn
Yeah.
later.
Yes,
Yeah.
much later. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, we digress.
Uh-huh.
Well, I guess that's kind of it for episode 1. I think we should kind of wrap it up. I would love suggestions for other episodes. What do people
Absolutely.
want to hear? Do you have stories from your grandparents, from your cousins? Like, we want to hear those. We want to share them. We want and I don't think we said at the beginning kind of what the podcast is about, and maybe we need to like edit that back in at the front, but we want to talk about relationships. We want to talk about personal and professional growth. We want to talk about the weird, bizarre things in
Yeah.
life. We want to talk about creepy, paranormal, interesting, weird, like all of it. So
Yeah, no
share with
topic
us.
is off
What would you like
limits.
us to hear? No
Yeah.
topic is off limit.
Yeah.
And even sitting in Granny's basement and the older cousins telling ghost stories,
Ugh,
like we're definitely going to do that on this podcast. So send us some. Let
yes.
us know what we should talk about. We are here to share with you.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you
Yes.
for joining
Yes,
us
I would like to thank
on
everyone
Granny's
for joining
Basement
us. Yeah.
Podcast.